Kia ora koutou, hello everybody and welcome to Epic Aotearoa Create a Better Future podcast, where every week we share uplifting messages told by New Zealanders in their own words. Our mission is to share the learnings from those lived experiences, inspire our listeners to take positive action and go out there and create a better future. Proudly brought to you by co-founders Joe Hortai, former soldier in the Special Air Service, family man and aspiring entrepreneur, and Brian Osman, a knowledge engineer, family man, entrepreneur, and all-round good dude. Thank you for connecting with us today. Now let's get started and create a better future. Let's go.
I think some of the stuff I'm getting out of your guys' discussions with the operators, and I've had a bit to do with some of these operators too. Not these guys, but in the past, growing up in Wairau, you can't help but run across some of these guys. In fact, as I said, one of my best friends was in SAS as a intel officer. And Joe has a few jokes about that. But one of the things that these guys are saying, I mean, Kane, he was saying, think it, say it, do it. That philosophy, Kane Middleton, which in ninja philosophy is thought, word, and deed. It's the same principles. So meditation, you're thinking about it, your mantra of speaking it, and then you're doing it, your mudra, in Indian terms. So your mantra might be Om Cream Cream Hum Patswa, or it might be, hey, I want to do something, blah, blah, blah. That's your speaking. Your thought is your visualization. Interestingly, when you look at some of the other work that I'm doing around magic and visualization and that sort of thing and manifestation, I Magi Nation, magician nation. That's how you do magic. You visualize in your eye imagination, your third eye, if you like. So you have this idea of the thought, visualizing what you want to achieve. So many athletes will tell you I do a lot of visualization. The word, and you see it in rugby players. You see it like in Johnny Wilkinson, goes to kick a goal.
Yes.
He's doing this. In ninjutsu, in the higher levels of Ninpo, you would do this sort of thing, which is mudra, which is hand gestures, which come out of India and Tibet. And these philosophies come from Mahayana Buddhism and the Shingon sect of Mahayana Buddhism. So you see in ninja movies, the ninjas doing this sort of thing, all sorts of things. And what they're doing is each time you do that, you're building that energy, if you like, that field. So you're talking about it, you're saying it. I'm going to have this happen. I'm going to have that. But the key thing is the deed as well. You have to have the deed. We can't just something manifests here right now. I want a can of Coke. Bang, it's here. Unless you're some of these super magicians who can do that sort of stuff. These magi. So you have to go out and do it. I'll give you an example of what I learned about this, and it all relates back to the training. For example, non-attachment. You have to have this. So if you're going to manifest something. You know how sometimes people get to a certain point, they've worked really hard, and it's like, oh, it's just not happening. And they say, F it, the F word, throw their hands in the air like they just don't care. Next thing, it appears on their doorstep because they stop trying and they let it go. A watch pot never boils. Let it go, rather than, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Let it go. Just forget about it, and it'll come to you. And you might be walking around a corner and all of a sudden something's there. When I was in Sydney, we lived in Edgecliff, and Wallara actually went to get up to go to work. We like cats meowing around my feet. Like, oh, I haven't got any cat food in the thing. Darn. Can't do much. Go off to work. Should get the cat some cat food. Got 17 cents in my pocket. So, well, that ain't going to happen. So anyway, get off the train. Something says, go this way. And this is about the non-attachment of moving always in this direction or setting yourself a set of techniques. The technique being I always go up this road, then I go that road and this road. Listening to your inner self. Oh, I'll go this way. I won't argue. Ego wasn't going to argue because normally the ego goes, oh, I know better than you. I'm going this way. Just let it go. Went that way. Now go this way. Okay. There's voices in your head, you know. Anyway, I'm walking down the street to cut a long story short, and there's a church there, and there's these columns, and then on the brick wall on the front of the church, and there's come across in between one of these, and sitting on the wall is a tin of cat food.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, that the idea of the secret and how does this happen? And, you know, a lot of it is exercising the principles you're doing within Taijutsu to make that work. So the visualizing the tin of cat food, although I didn't sit down and actually visualize it. So this whole idea of manifesting and creating things through the visualization. You know, I said about going back to the elements, you know, interestingly, if you talk to a Japanese person, what's nature? And as you know, they have kami for everything, which is spirits. So a Japanese person will say, God is nature, or what's God? God is nature. Everything around you is a reflection of God. God is there. God is the tree. That's God. And nature is always naturally expressing itself elementally, perhaps. So it's interesting when you get, I have a lot of respect for these SF guys because they're where the rubber meets the road. There's no BS. You can't have any BS in there. You can't be dancing around flashily on the middle of a battlefield while someone's shooting at you. You just got to get the job done. And I'm totally in respect of the fact that I've never been on a battlefield, although I visualize when I'm training that I am actually in the 13th century or 14th century or whatever it is, doing these techniques on the battlefield. But so naturally, the armed forces would gravitate towards these elements, and the people who are good at what they do in those specific modalities gravitate towards those. So people who like water, they go in the Navy. People who like the earth, they go in the Army. People who like flying around, they go in the Air Force. People who like to be at the sharp end of the spear, they go into SF. Then you look at an SF crew, and you know, you've got maybe your medic gets all the medication from the earth. You've got the radio operator talking through the airwaves. You've got the linguist who's actually feeding back information, the interpreter, if you like. And then you've got the explosive expert. So again, in a typical troop, you've got these four modalities. In a rugby team, you've got the forwards, you've got the backs, you've got the wingers, four modalities. So what you're saying is if you could harness the strengths within those particular people and put them in the right modalities, of course it's their element. They're going to be in that element, and they're going to shine in that element because they are really good at that. Of course, the issue then is that all of a sudden your your forwards have to defend, and it's like, oh God, but I'm just used to going forward, and now you want me to move back. So the training aspect of that is, well, you have to teach them to defend as well, you know. So again, it goes back to that technique philosophy relationship. So yeah, so those, again, different modalities manifest themselves in different ways. But as you say, everything that has form, you're creating a field as well, or something that has even been proven scientifically to still stay there. If I put something on the desk now and I take it away, there still is a field there. So yeah, creating that sort of thing. And that's all coming out in the martial arts. And that's the Ninpo side of it. Another thing that's really interesting, if I may, about the philosophy of the Mikyo, which is the higher level, is we have these two mandalas within Tibetan Buddhism. So this is it's called the Kongokai. The Kongokai is the diamond way matrix. So that is, you're at the center of the universe looking out. Okay. The second one is called the Taizokai. So the Taizokai is about you're at the outside of the universe looking in. So one's a perspective of looking from the outside in, and the other one's a perspective of looking from the inside out. In Japanese, they call it amote and ura. So amote is the outside and ura is the inside, yin and yang. So in yin and yang, you can see things from two perspectives. You can see it from, you can be in the forest looking out, or you can be on the outside of the forest looking in. Sometimes you have struggled seeing the forest through the trees, so to speak. So my point here is it's interesting in Japanese teaching where, say, for example, ski. Ski means to thrust, to strike. Ski also means weakness. So in one aspect, you are thrusting forward to strike, and in the other aspect, you are having that weakness that is getting struck to. Because obviously when you're fighting, you want to be hitting the weak points. You don't want to be trying to bolster against strength and fortifications. So we carry around these weaknesses around here. So naturally, the sword goes for the weaknesses. This is why people always pick on you. You're short, you're bald, you're fat, you're ugly, you're whatever, because it's for you to learn to strengthen those weaknesses within your life, so that then you can become a helper, if you like, for the blade. You start wielding the blade and helping other people to strengthen their weaknesses, which comes back to teaching. So I suppose another principle of ura and omote would be what we call hapogiri. Hapogiri is attacking in 8 directions. So you're cutting with the sword in 8 directions, asterisks if you like. The other side of that is hapogiri is actually being aware in 8 directions. So you'll see sometimes in martial arts where you'll be looking straight ahead and someone will come in to strike and you'll just deal with them. Or you might deal with someone over here while you're looking straight ahead. You know, this is using your peripheral. This is training where you concerning yourself of being attacked from 8 directions. So you've got the ura and the omote side of it. So you've got this inside and outside perspective. So that's pretty much inherent in all of the ideas of the teaching, that if you come forward with a strong kamae, obviously there's a weakness. There has to be. But saying that, the kamae that we've been doing developed over thousands of years for these martial arts. From my opinion, my humble opinion, these are anatomically perfect in the sense that they've come from this. That's all it is. And when people say, oh, your martial art's not as good as my one, that's the difference. It ain't really a lot to change from a knife hand guarding block in karate to a ichimonji in our art. But then also you're looking at this other principle that these guys talk about as nagare or flow. So you're flowing from one situation to another as you're going through these kamae, because that's the other thing that people are doing. They're always in these modalities when you see them in the street and they're interacting. And really martial arts is about helping you to better interact with your environment. And people are just as much your environment as the trees and the birds and the flowers and the bees. So understanding these different modalities, and if you watch an argument or a discussion, you'll see he's attacking, they're trying to evade, or they're defending, then they're counterattacking, and you can see these things play out in a discussion or a business negotiation. This is why Golden No Sho is such a prominent piece of reading for any business person in Japan. It's because they have these modalities, you know. But you read it. I read it years ago, and it's like, a carpenter. What's it got to do with martial arts? You know, I didn't quite relate to that, but now I can understand that. So, yeah, I think the other thing that I really appreciate is humility. I know Nick Corwell was talking about that. When you go to Japan, I went to a class with one of the Shihan. It comes from a 400-year-old samurai family, and we're doing sword work. And it's like, no, you don't cut like this. It's like, I've been doing this for 32 years, and I've been doing it wrong.
What did you tell me? Yes, thank you.
You know, but that's the nature of it. And you know, when Hatsumi does a class in the dojo, he doesn't want to see people doing it. He doesn't want to see them getting it. It's like I annoy my, I used to have a Ninja Kids class, and I annoy them, and they cottoned onto it because I told them. It's like, do you ever notice that when I say you're doing something really good, I change it? Because I don't want them to be doing the good stuff. I want them to be doing the crap stuff, and I want them to get better at the crap stuff, because it's the weaknesses that'll get you killed, not the strengths. It's this weak kamae at the back. It's this leg that's not right, and someone can kick it out and take you down or whatever. So
yeah,
that sort of approach.
That's a nice segue into a question I've got, and you just alluded to, you know, going to Japan, and I'm really wanting to explore a little bit more about that. Particularly, you know, we're talking the 80s and 90s or early 90s perhaps. Your first foray to Japan, your first trip to Japan, how did that come about, and was it everything that you thought it would be?
Funny. After I finished with the 9 schools in Martin, and we moved to Hamilton, and a couple of students contacted me and said, "Can we come and train with you?" I said, "Yeah, no, that's all right." We can't find a school in Auckland, so they used to come down every week, and we would train in the back paddock in the school. And there was a few years later, one of my old students from Wellington said to me, "I've got this guy who lives in Hamilton. Would you like to? Would you mind if I gave him your contact details?" And his name was Simon Gaunt. And I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." Anyway, I got in touch with Simon, and he had been to Japan lots of times. He's English, so he'd been from England and many times. And anyway, I started training in his class. He just sort of picked up on me and kept saying, "You got to go to Japan, Stu. You got to go to Japan." It's like, because I hadn't been to Japan, and this was in 2003, 2002, something like that. So I still hadn't been to Japan. And he sort of annoyed me a little bit. "You got to get to Japan." It's like, yeah. So at one stage I booked everything, but then I couldn't make it because I'd started up my own IT company and I couldn't take time off. Anyway, so he's a bit disappointed about that. And then, funnily enough, I had a dream about Nagato Sensei, who's one of the top Shihan in Japan. Never met him, seen him on video and stuff like that. And because he was prominent, it's like, there's a sign. I'm going to Japan. This was later on. And anyway, we're in the dojo, and Simon sort of, I sort of secretly went around and got all my tickets and everything, and Simon saying, "So who's going to Japan with us this time?" Looks at me. No. "Who's really going to Japan?"
Are you sure you're going to Japan?
Yeah. No, I'm not pulling your leg. I'm going to Japan. So now something had happened before then to try and help me get to Japan, and Simon might refute this. When I came back from Australia in 2003, just cutting back to there a bit, I went to the Taikai in Sydney. In Hatsumi Sensei had come over and done a big training in Sydney. At the time, I was a 3rd Dan black belt with Michael Gent, and I sort of wanted to move on. And so normally you've got to be a 4th Dan, and then you go to 5th Dan. 5th Dan is called the Godan test. There's only one test in the Bujinkan. It's 5th Dan test, called the test of truth, if you like. Anyway, I decided I was going to sit the Godan test, even though I was only a 3rd Dan. So anyway, Hatsumi's, I told people, I wasn't ashamed, I said, "Well, if I pass, I pass. If I don't, not piggy." Now, the way that, I don't know whether you've seen it, the Godan test is where you sit kneeling, facing the opposite way or the same way as the Hatsumi behind you, and you close your eyes and you sit in Seiza, which is a seating posture. Hatsumi will say a couple of prayers, and then he lifts up a shinai and drops it. No timing or whatever, and you have to roll out of the way. So you have to sense it. And that's the 5th Dan test. And anyway, I was the second one to do it from the Kiwis, and I passed. And I just was attuned to that sort of thing, and it felt like he was sort of pushing my back to move me out of the way as he came down with the intention. The intention's called Sakijitsu. It's a killer intention. So even though he's only cutting with a shinai, he projected the killer intention, so you have to get out of the way. Anyway, moving forward to before I went to Japan with Simon, him and another Shihan did a seminar, and at the seminar, they had said, anyone who went for their 5th Dan in 2003 who hadn't paid for it, blah, 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 because they didn't pay for it, there was reasons behind that, they're no longer 5th Dan. And Simon says, "What are you going to do, Stu?" I said, "You got to give your 5th Dan badge up." I said, "I don't really care." I said, "My last certificate was a Nidan, which is 2nd Dan. I'll just go back to 2nd Dan." And I think it took him by surprise. Like, no, you should be bawling your eyes out. I didn't really care. And anyway, he said, no, you can't be a 2nd Dan. I said, "Well, why not?" And he said, no, you should be a 4th Dan. Because you can grade up to the Dan before you, except for 5th Dan, in the Bujinkan. So if you're a 3rd Dan, you can grade to 2nd, and so on and so on. So he could grade me to 4th Dan. He said, "I'm grading you to 4th Dan." So in the space of 10 minutes, I went from being a 5th Dan to a 2nd Dan to a 4th Dan. Which meant, and the only way I could get graded to 5th Dan was to go to Japan. So Simon kept saying, "You got to go to Japan. You got to do your 5th Dan test." So I had that in the back of my mind. Okay. And so we flew off to Japan. And he said, "You good to go, fifth dan?" I said, yeah, whatever. I don't really care. So anyway, first training with Hatsumi Sensei. We'd do a training every day just about with each Shihan, and Hatsumi would be special days. And Simon says, "You go in your fifth?" Yep. Hatsumi says, "Okay, over there." So anyway, go over there. And I was the second one up, and he does the thing, cuts down, and I roll away. This time, though, his intention was a lot less, and it felt like he was blowing on it. Now, that's sort of, I'm one of the very few people in the Bujinkan who's ever sat and passed the fifth dan test.
Twice.
So, because I got it taken off me. So that was quite amazing. But so the experience of the Hombu Dojo, because I trained under Hatsumi in Taikai, he came over to New Zealand in 1994, I think it was, and we did a Taikai here as well in Auckland. But training in the Hombu Dojo is immersed in as much as you can in the Japanese culture, what have you. So it's a lot different. Now, one of the really amazing experiences I had was we were training, myself and Simon's partner at the time. She was only like a green belt or something. We were training together. And in the Hombu Dojo, as I said, it's pretty magical in there. Things happen. It's really weird. We were training, and she was pulling off things like defense against a knife that even some of the Shihan couldn't do. And she was just flowing. It's like, and she was surprising herself, and I was surprised. It's like, after that, it's like, where the hell did that come from? She says, I don't know. But I'd heard stories. A guy was with a bow, a green belt, with a 6-foot staff. He was standing there, and he was sort of struggling with things. Anyway, Hatsumi says, "Okay, you demonstrate." And as he went to demonstrate, Hatsumi did this kuji. It's like a spell. Explain that. Just quietly. Guy goes out there. Guy attacks him. Boom. He was freaked out. He didn't know what happened. It's like, where the hell did that come from? So there's some amazing stuff. But one of the funny things was when I went there, we went to Nagato's class. Now, Nagato was Japan kickboxing champion. He's got muscles the size of my thighs, on his arms. And he's like, he hits you, you know about it. Anyway, we go to this class, and Simon introduces me and says, "This is Stuart from..." "Oh, yeah, who's Stuart?" Yeah, he doesn't speak much English. Or he speaks pretty good. Anyway, next Nagato class, Simon says, Simon had said to me, Nagato likes the new guys. And, he'll pull the new guys out. Anyway, I'm trying to think of a technique in case he pulls me out. Because the first thing they do is they say, "Okay, technique." And then they'll elaborate on the technique that you've just shown. So anyway, I get someone out. Oh, no. So anyway, Nagato's there. "Okay, technique. Kiwis." "Stuart." I'm shitting myself. Like, I'm going to get the crap beaten out of me because I know that once I demonstrate the technique, I then become Nagato Zuke for the rest of the training.
I get you.
Yeah, so I was freaking out. And anyway, Nagato was really kind to me, though. I'd seen other guys that I'd gone with who were pretty cocky, and he'd like have them on the ground, and he'd be like, like this, And it's like, oh man, I'm going to get some of that. So no, it was amazing in the sense that I didn't actually succumb to that. That sort of, I wouldn't say it's brutality. It's just, I think sometimes if you don't exude a lot of ego, they want to bash the ego out of you. And if you don't sort of exude a lot of that, like you know what you're doing or you think you know it all, there's no need to hit people. I always remember a training session with a Spanish guy named Pedro in Auckland, and he's beating the crap out of some of these guys, like really hitting them hard. And he comes up to me and he goes, and I'm training with someone, and he says, "You getting this?" I says, "Nah." He says, "Good. Student." He shakes my hand and walks off. And I'm thinking, when's it my turn to go out there and get the crap beaten out of me, being a high rank? Anyway, he comes up beside me and this guy later on, and he goes, "Some people don't need to be hit." I thought that was really cool. So my experience in Japan was very eye-opening. I wrote an article about it later on about my experiences. But one thing it did prompt me to do was next time was to go by myself. There's a principle in martial arts called Musha Shujo. Musha Shujo is warrior quest. It's where you go from a position of comfortability, you try yourself with all your God-given gifts. I took my IT tech out there. I thought I've got all this stuff, all the train stuff and everything.
Yeah.
Took it on my PDA. Got to the train station. It's not working. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It's like you just get tested, eh? It's like, you know, you're here. So, yeah, it was. I came back with the 5th dan, and then subsequently, I think it was last time I went. I took my son. He's been doing martial arts with me or Kobudo since he was 13. I let him start. He's 29 now, I think, 28, 29. He's a 4th dan. And we went through Singapore, him and his mate, and then we went on to Japan. So for me, that was magic in the sense that I got to train with my son on one of Hatsumi's last classes because he's retired now. He handed over all the soke ships or the Menkyo Kaiden, which is the Grandmaster ships, to all his senior students, and he's retired. So that was pretty special. And that's where I got my 10th dan. So you have to have a recommendation from 3, what they call Dai Shihan, which is the top grade. So you've got 10th, then you've got 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, and then you got Dai Shihan. So you got another 6 grades above where I am. So I'm not even a pimple on Hatsumi Sensei's backside.
Yeah, but you're somewhere there. You're somewhere there.
Which is quite a nice place to be. I'm somewhere there. So yeah, but my most memorable experience, I think, in Japan, I was by myself. I don't know why. It was after Soke's class. Soke means 0, so he's gone full circle, if you like. After Soke's class, I'm standing outside, leaning against the fence, just talked to a Canadian guy. Hatsumi comes out. He gets into a car to drive off. I don't know why, but I stood up to attention and saluted him. He gets out of the car, walks around to me, shakes my hand and says, "Very good." And he gets back in the car and drives off. You know, what's amazing about that is here's this guy, where is he in here, who, and you're shaking his hand, you're in the Hombu dojo, and he's just so humble and he just cares about people and he just makes that effort. So I don't know, that was quite weird.
That is
a lot of
interesting. Actually, you've just twigged another thought, and I remember again being a young fella and doing Kempo karate in Puriro, just north of Wellington. Robert Gemmell, who was the Grandmaster there, or the Master. All the head guy.
The head guy.
Yeah, all the terms have pretty much gone out the window. That's a long time ago. But I do remember as I must have been a white belt, perhaps. I don't think I was yellow. I don't even think I got to a coloured belt yet. But there was some sort of big workshop. It wasn't just one class. There was like other bouts or other classes in there. And I walked straight in with this other guy. And then one of the black belts said, "Drop down, give me 20. So, okay, cool. Dropped out, give me 20. And I didn't even see the head guy. I didn't even see him. He was standing there somewhere. All right. But so we're doing our 20 push-ups, got up, and then the black belt explained why. And then I think I did have some interaction with him, with Bob Kim. It wasn't a lot, but that stood out in my mind because it's like my first impression is, why am I being punished? That's how I took it. But yeah, I'm a 13-year-old or whatever it is. Yeah. Why am I being punished? But then he goes. Then the black belt explained why we do this, and then that it really triggered a thought in my mind about respect, the whole respect thing. Yeah, and it's this person has worked to get to that point. We demonstrate respect, but that comes with the discipline behind that helps us with our grounding, knowing that, as you're saying, the ego doesn't. Oh, I'm a white belt. I'm doing this, but I'm still a white belt. I'm just flailing my arms, man. I'm like, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah,
I'm clueless. Yeah,
clueless.
Again, as you explain all this, and I'm having these flashbacks, which is really weird. But anyway, I remember we had these again this I don't know what you would call it. It's like a big school gathering of work. It's more than a workshop. It wasn't just a tournament, but it was in Topol, and so we drove north, or they drove south, or wherever they came from, and it was like the middle of winter, which is a great time to have that right on a lake, because we were right on the lake, and and so there's a class. And I suspect there was something like 100 of us, but lucky all the youngins and the well, not quite the youngest, but all the colored, the white belts and so forth were at the back, the black belts in the front, and they were up to the water like this, up to their chest doing these techniques. And all I could think about then is, I don't want to be a black belt. I don't want to be there.
Well, that's really interesting you say that, because a lot of high-ranking Bujinkan, careful what you wish for. They want to go over there and get the grades, but it's really it's a curse in a way, because you've got to live up to it. So it's all very well being a 10th dan or a Shihan or whatever, but there are people looking at you all the time, the all-seeing eyes, looking at you going, that guy doesn't look very good. One of the things that's quite interesting about that aspect of it is sometimes people will judge you. You go to a workshop and you want to empty your cup because you want to pick up on anything that anyone's doing. And, people are looking at you and going, oh, he's not very good. And you're going, and you're thinking to yourself, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't care what people think. But yeah, of course I'm not, because I'm trying something new. I'm working on a different dynamic that I've never worked on before. And that's what it goes back to Japan, where Hatsumi Sensei wants to see you fail. He don't want to see you do the stuff that you can do. It's like, once someone said to me, I used to work in a big place down in Martin, production engineering, and I was a technical writer down there, but someone had said, we need some guys to go out the back into the engineering room and just make all these standoffs. And that just takes 13 seconds. I did the whole process thing. Anyway, I said, I'll do it. And someone said, why would you want to do that? And I said, because I need the discipline. They said, what? I said, you've been doing martial arts for years. Why do you need discipline? I said, that's why I do martial arts. Because I keep needing the discipline. Right. It's not because I've got it. If I had it, I wouldn't bother. It keeps me on the straight and narrow. And that's the thing when you go to these seminars and people are looking at you and it's like, oh, you're not very good. Yeah, of course I'm not very good. My taijutsu is shit. It's crap. But if I'm teaching a class, I can demonstrate okay because it's my stuff. But I can't do your stuff. And I think in Japan, it's evolved. It used to be very hard yakka, and now it's very subtle. And in Japan, you'd have a Shihan like Seno, and he would be like, move your thumb half a millimeter. They're really particular on that. But now I really struggle with some of the stuff that some of these Shihan are doing is, just capturing the balance. And people, this is where the criticism for Bujinkan is like, oh, yeah, these guys, they just put their hands out there and, they're not doing martial arts. I'm not doing martial arts. I'm not fighting. I don't teach my students to fight. I teach them to survive, whatever modality that takes. It's not about fighting. If you're in the fight, if you're engaging with your opponent, then chances are you're going to get hit. It's like knife fighting, knife defense. Anyone who tells you that, if you come up against someone with a knife, that you can do this and this and this, or the old Taekwondo one of this, who's going to stab you on top of the head, and then you do this, and then they let go of the knife, and you end up with a knife sticking out your head. You are going to get cut. And case in point, the guy, the Malaysian guy I was talking about on the building site, the guy who did Parkour, I saw him a few weeks later. He hadn't been into work, and he comes in and he's got a big bandage on his arm. And I said, what happened to you? And he said, oh, I got slashed with a knife. I says, really? He said, because he was a security guard and he was up the King's Cross, and there was some guys milling around a shop front, and he said to them, hey, what are you doing? And then one of them turned around, and he had the coat over his head because it was raining, so he had his raincoat over like this, and just sort of pushed past him. And then he went into a video store because he didn't have cell phones in those days, and he said, oh, can I use your phone? I need to ring my boss. I've caught these guys breaking into the thing. And he said, yeah, okay, but are you all right? Are you okay? And he goes, oh, what do you mean? And he said, you've got blood running down your arm. He didn't feel it. He didn't know it had happened, which comes back to that thing of awareness of no matter situational awareness, no matter how switched on you are, anything can happen. He didn't fight this guy. He wouldn't have fought the guy with a knife anyway, but it's just how quick it could happen, So I think it's interesting, though, because people will say to you, oh, gun will beat you anytime. At the 2003 Taikai in Sydney, a guy named Shane Harris, he's now Shihan, he was taking photos, official photographer, huge area, I forget where it was, somewhere in North Sydney, huge building. And anyway, Hatsumi Sensei afterwards said, okay, now, all you people, just tell us something that you've picked up from the 2 weeks or 2 days of training. And he got to Shane, and Shane said, well, being the official photographer, he said, you know, I couldn't get over the fact that no matter where I was in the facility, as soon as I lifted up my camera to take the photo, you'd look straight into the camera. So Hatsumi would go like this because he could sense the guy's attention all the time. So not, you know, it comes back to the conversation with Wayne Roy about, you know, putting your foot on the chair before the guy picks it up, or grabbing the bottle before the guy actually hits you over the head with it. Pretty hard to be in that mode all the time. And I've had a few flukes, I suppose. One was someone sitting behind me said, oh, do you want a lolly? And I said, oh, yeah. And she threw the lolly, and I just went like this and caught her. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't replicate that. Or I was walking down a gangway of a building site in central Sydney, and I just put my hand up and caught some guy's fist as he poked it out the door.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. But you couldn't sort of have that, replicate that.
Yeah, but the flip side of that, of course, it makes you look super cool because you just went like that. So you're obviously, yeah, until they say do it again.
They do it again.
Oh, man, so you're bringing back some really cool points, and I'm really, I just want to just probe a little bit into, I guess, a little bit into the technique, I suppose, if that's okay. And some thoughts I've got, they're buzzing my head around some martial arts, and just get your take on where you see them. But I'll share one quick story again. I remember I'm pretty sure it was a yellow belt, and I was fighting a green belt in a tournament. This is Kempo. And we were about the same age. I think he was just a little bit older than me. He was a lot more experienced than me. And I remember thinking, I'm done for. And it was no contact, but it was, but for a young fella, it was like, that's still a big thing. And first thought, I'm done for. This guy's going to eat me up. And guess what? Went in and allowed myself to get eaten up. Yeah, and all he was doing was as I reflect back, relatively simple moves, but I was like a deer in the headlights. Right? And then we disappeared for a bit, and he went away, and then maybe 6 months later or something, there was another tournament. Same thing. I came across the same guy, and we're in the same fight. And I was like, oh, great. Here we go again. Right? But this time it was different because I had just had that little bit more experience, and I recognized his approach. The way he was fighting was very similar. Now, I couldn't articulate it. At the time, I was too young. But when he would move, I was able to do whatever I needed to do. And I don't think I won that second round, but still, I felt like I was a lot better that second time than that first time. Right? So,
yeah.
When you're taking that, what's your take on that? You're practicing these techniques. Let's just say you're we won't call it a life or death situation because that's next level, right? But let's say you're Kumute, you're in a tournament, or you're practicing and you're sparring and what have you. How do you see that progression from saying, this guy's going to do me or whatever, or I'm going to get done in this fight, but I've practiced a little bit, to then going a little bit more and being able to be competitive, that, for want of a better word, if you know what I mean.
Sorry, I'm laughing. We don't compete in the Bujinkan. I can speak from my experience in Taekwondo, but in Taekwondo, I was just about to go for my second dan, and I was down in a tournament in Wellington. Thought I was really cool, and I just got the snot kicked out of me by this little guy called Tufa Fao. He was regional boxing champion and a black belt. He won the whole tournament.
I know, yeah.
Tufa Fao.
I know him, yeah.
You know Tufa Fao?
What a small world.
Yeah. Second round, I had some groin. I didn't have a groin guard for a start. And so he probably remember this. Didn't have a groin guard, and so they found me this thing that was about 2 sizes too big for me. I would have had to have balls like an elephant to be able to fit it properly. And anyway, I'm wearing this thing, and I can hardly kick. And he's coming in with these combinations: kick, bang, bang, kick, bang, bang, poof, poof, poof. And I'd never done. I was always a kicker. I'd never really done much handwork. Anyway, by about the second round, I had blood coming out of here and blood coming out of here, and I was feeling woozy. And I got about 3/4 of the way through the second round, and the ref said, "You're all right?" And I said, "Nah, F this." I said, "I'm out of here." Because I had to, well, yeah, he beat the crap out of me. So I learned more about losing tournaments than I did about winning them. Yeah, but going to, suss people out and the competitive side of it, because the Bujinkan is traditional, and I'm probably not going to answer your question here in respect of that, but it is important that the focus on fighting, for want of a better term, or engaging, is to get to a point called Jupo Sesho. Jupo Sesho means a point of negotiation or connection. So the idea is that you're defending, you mobilize the person into that point where it's like, okay, now, do you want to talk about this, or do we carry on? Where you're in a position of advantage, where you've got all your tools available to you. Ideally, you've locked them up in your body, and you've still got your hands and some of your feet available, and maybe a weapon or whatever, and you can discuss this, which is really the idea of a lot of military institutions or units, is that, the government sends them there to soften the other organization up, or the opposition up, and then the politics come in and actually talk politics. Hey, you've got no army left, your army's decimated, let's talk about some negotiation. Interestingly, the Dalai Lama always said, in dialogue there was hope, so you have this dialogue. So getting to this point of connection, of this Jupo Sesho, because the mindset is really important. You said that before, when you're training, is having this mindset of, it's like the difference between a wooden knife and a metal knife. This ain't sharp. I know how to sharpen it, I was a butcher. But the mindset is very hard to govern when you're sort of training, and it's like, this just rubs across you, and it's like, you ignore it. So you've got to have this mindset that if that rubbed across you, because it's ura and amote, inner and out, so it's how it affects other people as well. If that rubs across you here, it's probably not going to do much. Might cut a couple of tendons on the thumb, which could be hard to hold the knife after that. But if it cuts you across here and it cuts your vein, you're in trouble. So it's that mindset of when you're training, is that what would happen if this was real? And if it's real, I need to respond for my attacker to show, or my defender, that this would actually do this to me. It would cut me. The mindset's interesting. I had a couple of guys come to my class in Hamilton once, and they've been training with this guy, wannabe ninja, got to green belt, decided to run his own dojo, couldn't even pronounce half the people's names properly. Anyway, I let them train with me, and I was training with one of them, and he got me into a point of Jupo Sesho, and then I feel this knife blade go across the back of my neck. And I said, "What did you do that for?" "Oh, I want to finish you off." I said, "Why would you want to do that?" "Oh, because you attacked me." And I had a lawyer, a legal executive in the class. She was a black belt. And I said to her, "How much, what would that get him in jail?" And she said, "Oh, well, it'd certainly get him to jail because he's just killed you." I said, "You can't go around training like that." I said, "What's this finishing off stuff?" This is the mindset that some people have, which is scary. Anyway, his father was there. His father had been doing it as well. And he sort of said, "Oh, yeah, well, you might go to jail, you might go solitary confinement for 6 months, then you'll be out plowing a field." So needless to say, these guys didn't last long in the dojo. I got rid of them. But that whole idea of mindset, which links back to the idea of ninjutsu. And again, ninjutsu can't be practiced on anyone who doesn't have an intent to actually follow through. Sakijutsu, the Godan test, I want to kill you, or I want to hurt you, or I want to maim you. Because the whole idea behind ninjutsu is that you are playing with their perception of reality. You have this principle called Kyojutsu Tenkan-ho, the interchanging of actuality and falsehood. Say, for example, I've got this cane, this piece of bamboo, just a piece of bamboo. You're up against a samurai. Samurai goes, "It's got a piece of bamboo. I cut through those every day when I'm practicing sharpening my sword." So he still comes in and attacks. And then as he comes into attack, you draw the sword. This is, and so you're manipulating him on his perception, and then you might cut him or something somewhere or whatever. So this idea of interchanging actuality and falsehood is really important, where you're faking something, feinting something. Oh, it's a punch coming in, but there's not really a punch. Bang! There is a punch. Or there's a kick coming in, it's not really a kick, and then all of a sudden a kick comes in. You're trying to captivate the person into moving in a certain into a space. So I said, yep, kukan.
Yep.
It's called kukan in Japanese. So you've got at the lower level, distance, second level, distance and timing, third level, distance, timing, and space. So someone like Christian Cullen was really good at that. He would create a space. He would pretend to throw it this way. This would create a space over here, and then he'd go through the space. So it's not just to martial arts. But it comes back to that idea of the non-fighting mindset and just controlling the situation. And interestingly, it's in everything. I was watching a couple of fighter pilots. Senior one was briefing the other one and saying, the longer you engage, the more chance there is that you're going to end up getting shot down. So don't engage for any longer than you have to. And again, it comes back to this idea of ninjutsu is about escaping and hiding. So you're not engaging by blocking the attack, you're escaping the attack, and then you're hiding the counterattack. Say, for example, you've got a couple of guys, the bigger guy picks on you, or a group of people. And so last thing you want to do is show everyone else that you can fight, and this guy ends up on the ground. So it may be that as he comes in, you sort of just fall back, and you accidentally, do a thrust into his groin or whatever, and he falls over. And, the guys just think, oh, he just fell over. Wasn't, but if you're showing that you're fighting, then people are going to come in on it. So ninjutsu requires that the person who's attacking actually has that intention. And this then relates to Masashi Sen no Sen, Go no Sen, Sen Sen no Sen, which is the different timings of the attack. So Go no Sen, for example, is where he's finished the attack, and then you start breaking down the thing that attacked you. Whereas, say, Sen no Sen might be he's just started the attack and you break in on the attack or the intent. Interesting thing is playing with that timing. One thing that a Royal Marine instructor who's in the Bujinkan said that really resonated with everyone was, there's no surer thing in a fight that you are the target. This is why I hated playing rugby, because I'm a little guy, and someone would throw you the ball, and then everyone's focusing on you. I was like, oh, shit, I'm going to get hammered here. It's scary. That's why I played soccer. I did martial arts. But so I had an interesting experience. You play with a timing where someone thinks that they've hit you. So there's a point of commitment. It's like letting the arrow go, shooting the gun where it's already gone on its target. So that is a point of commitment. It's committed. It's not stopping. There is a point of commitment in the attack, which can be sort of anywhere, but depending on their intention, between this far away or that far away from your attack. Now, I had an interesting experience with one of my students where I was playing with this timing, because you got to work at it. It doesn't happen naturally. And so I'd move at the very last minute. And he was good enough, or last second, he was good enough to give me a good straight punch, and he would have punched me and hit me if I hadn't moved.
Yep.
So he had the good intent. Anyway, he comes in, and I moved just at the split second, and then finished the technique. And he's on the ground, and he's sort of sitting there, and he's shaking his head. I say, "You right?" He said, "Oh, I'm not sure." I said, "What?" He said, "Oh, no, I don't know. I can't say." Anyway, afterwards, I went up to him and I said, "What was all that about?" And he said, "Oh, it was weird." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "I went to attack you, and I thought I'd hit you, and then everything just went into a white flash.
Yeah.
Everything just went white. And then I was lying on the ground. So I short-circuited his brain." I always think of the story of Chris Ryan when he escaped through Bravo 20, and he was tired and hungry, and he might have had some radiation stuff, and he kept getting these in his head as he's trying to get to the Euphrates, to get to Syria, to get out of Iraq on their Bravo 20 escape. And he said that, next thing, there's all this brilliant flash of light. And I think it was the same thing, his brain was short-circuiting. So that then is the idea of messing with the perception of your opponent, because you know that the punch is going to be here, so don't be there and let it go past. And quite often you see Hatsumi, it'll come past and he'll just capture it on his elbow and throw the guy, without even using any hands, or just move him in a certain way. The other thing that we do quite a bit is I suppose you'd relate it to the SF's of Special Forces weapon of flashbangs. Call it Mitsubishi, not the car, not Mitsubishi, which is blinding powder or clouding the vision or the mind of the person. So you'd see in the ninja movies that they might throw a blinding powder into someone's eyes, and then while they're just incapacitated, they didn't escape. And that's where some of the myths come from. And like the ninja was in the castle, and next thing there was a brilliant flash of light, and a bird flew out the window. The ninja turned into a bird, and the bird might have been carrying the ninja and throwing the thing, and then for distraction sent the bird that way while he escaped that way. But the myth was ninja were able to transform into different animals and stuff and make their way out. So that again, that's an idea of a ninjutsu of playing with the perception of your opponent. But of course, I had one guy once in a workshop, and I said, "Come into punch," and he was a black belt. And anyway, he came into punch, and I know I moved within that that timing, where he should have thought that he hit me. And I said to him just quietly, I said, "Did you think you hit me then?" He goes, "No." And this is the guys who do ninjutsu who can't even punch properly. They don't have the intention behind the punch. So, the thought, the word, and the deed wasn't there altogether. Again, I go back to this idea of, I'm doing ninjutsu. Well, you don't even understand Budo. How can you be doing ninjutsu? And that'll probably get a few people's backs up. But if you think about it, and the Shihan in Japan will tell you the same thing. They will tell you that, that you need to have a good attack to be able to.
No,
you can't pretend.
But you've got to put everything behind it, I guess. Yeah.
Behind it, yeah, and that's the thing. Yep. If people are totally committed, they are very strong in this direction. But if obviously, as you talked about, yin and yang, very weak in this position, so you have that advantage. It's the sen or sen, or the timing is the same as you're doing a business deal, and signing on the dotted line is that point of commitment. And up to that point, you can change the nature of the business. You can negotiate people session and change that. So it's the same sort of thing.
I got this recollection as you talk about that and the punch and so forth. Now, I remember we would flail our arms and then try and put out a kick thing and pretend we know what we're doing. But the stance, there's two thoughts coming in my head. The stance work is something that really resonates with me because a little bit later on, I actually could visualize angles. Like if I was in, say, I forgot what we call it now. Say a forward stance, so leaning more onto that front foot, that leg, and our back leg is out a bit. I can dissect 45-degree angle on myself, right? And I can see where that works. For some reason, that just connected with me, right? So I could get that, and later on, when I guess got more interested in other sports, basketball or what have you, right? I saw everything in angles. Everything is an angle. Everything, you work angles, right? And just like we talked before, whether it's a square circle or the octagon or cutting the sides off, everything is angles. But one of the things I do remember, which at the time I thought I was really cool, which was we practiced technique, which I think was called chicken wing, when somebody grabs your arm at the back, because that's what's going to happen in real life. You walk out on the street, because these were packaged as self-defense techniques. So I was waiting for somebody to grab my arm and go up there and just stand there and wait while I do my thing, right? So you meant to, and I'm making fun of this, but no disrespect to the people that were teaching it and what have you. You go back, step back, elbow into the head, and then you grab the wrist, you come back around, wrap the arm over or what have you. And so they meant to bend over while you were able to execute a kick into the ribs and then break the top of the arm. And they explained it quite well, but it was funny when we practiced it. It just didn't make sense. I was like, all right, it's that.
It is. Yeah, it is. So you've got to go with the principles, and it's interesting you say about the feet. We call it sabakigata, which is how you move. If you think of, you break your body down into two quadrants, or not quadrants. Quadrants probably, but ideally you have the upper part and the lower part. So it's like a tank. A tank will move into position, and then the turret turns, and then you're shooting. So if you think of it like the tanks are getting, the footwork is getting you the posture, the kamae. Because really, as we'd say in training, this is kamae, but these are only to hang the Christmas decorations off. It's really what your feet are doing that's more important, because they get you into the right position. And even further than that is, it's amazing. Sometimes in training, you're trying to do a technique, and you may just step I would say a millimeter, but say 10 millimeters or 20 millimeters too far on one angle, the whole technique changes. Whatever you do at the start changes the whole technique. So it's really important to understand the footwork, because again, that's that idea of distance. It's the feet that get you in close and the feet that get you back out. So that's the first point or first principle of that. And again, it comes back to, that's your feet, that's your abdomen, that's your tools, and that's your brain up here. That's again elemental. So it's a building's no good without a good foundation. And ideally in those techniques they will work. It's quite funny. I did a workshop once with someone who was into all this. I won't name the name because I can't remember him anyway.
Yes.
Pressure points, George Dillman stuff. So you hit them here with a triple warmer, you hit them here, and you hit them here, and they fall down. And it's like, okay, well, that's all very well, but I don't think the person's going to be standing there doing this. They're going to be moving. They're going to be trying to hit you. They're going to be, you got to have the gods on your side. You got to be a good person where luck falls in your favor. Luck favors the brave. This sort of idea. And it's very prominent. Another thing I've got here is called a koketsu shoge, right? So it's normally a metal ring with a sickle, and it's got a 14-foot or 12-foot horsehair rope. Of course, this hasn't. And that really epitomizes the whole idea of gods being on your side. There's no way that you could cast that out so that it actually falls on the top of the knife, the ring does, and then you whip it away. But if you're lucky, it will. In training, sometimes, I call these things gifts from the gods. You'll be doing something, and your person's thumb will get caught in your gi as you go down, and they end up throwing themselves. And I'll always say, "Oh, that's a gift from the gods," because you're a good person. Ninjutsu won't work for bad people, and this is where I really struggle with this. Ninjas are assassins, and they all wanted to kill, and they're arsonists, and all this sort of thing. Sure, there were mercenaries out there that were ninja historically, but most of them just wanted to live a good lifestyle without hurting anybody and live in peace and help other people who were being oppressed. They were freedom fighters. So they respected the gods. They understood the laws of cause and effect, the laws of nature. One of the things I've learned from moving in the country is the flow-on effect. If someone throws something in a stream upstream, it's going to float down to my stream, and then it's going to affect me. Or if I put something in the stream, it's going to flow down to the next property. We live on a 7-acre block in the middle of nowhere. So, this idea of everything has a cause and effect. Everything is connected as well, as you said before. So that idea of being a good person, it's interesting. I'd never thought of it this way. And a Taekwondo instructor said to me, a friend of mine from a while ago, or way back when I wasn't doing Taekwondo, he said, if you follow the principles of Taekwondo, perseverance, honesty, integrity, courtesy, all those things that we used to stand there and go, whatever, no one's going to attack you because you're a good person. Chances are very slim. If you go and rip somebody off, well, chances are they're going to want to get it back. If you want to be I think this is where I always say to people, the self-development side of this art. There are two parts to self-development. The first part is understanding your weaknesses and what you need to work on. It's quite often, there's these self-development groups you go to, and it's like, okay, so I've just realized I'm an asshole. How do I fix it? The next part is the hard part. It's the self-development. You have to apply yourself and actually change your way of doing things, change the way of thinking, So in that sense, there is effort. It's hard. I mean, it's the same as this, it's hard. Everyone wants to be a ninja, but no one wants to train. Some people would say, you've got to confront yourself. Some people would rather sell their own mother than confront themselves. It's the same we used to have quite often because it's hard. it's hard to look at yourself in the mirror. I mean, that's the ego side of it. I define the ego as what you think you see in the mirror. Oh, is this really good looking, handsome guy, big muscles and everything like that, and he's awesome. And it's like someone else looks at you and goes, what a loser. And in fact, I said to Joe, Bill Bestick might like this one. He talked about being at the Desert Fair in Wairau, right? And it was probably after my time. I think he's a bit younger than me. He might not be. And anyway, I used to go to the Desert Fair as well. And in Wairau, as I said, I was a bit of a brat. And so he went to the Desert Fair and he's looking at these two SF guys, two SAS guys, and just admiring their demeanor. And, if I'd have been in the same era, there would have been a little guy over here with long blonde hair, a yellow Swanndri with Jar Rastafari on the back and a pair of Ugg boots. And Bill would have gone, Civvy Street.
Which one?
SAS. SAS. I don't want to end up like this guy. So there's to you, Bill.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Took the long road.
I took the long road.
That's awesome. That's a hard case, actually. All right.
But I think also talking about resilience, just one other thing. I reached into my drawer last night and found this from a friend of mine, which is, what is it? Nana Korobi Oki. Fall down 7 times, get up 8. And it's so synonymous with these guys who go on selection, who keep going. In Japanese we say gambate. And it requires a principle called shugyo. Shugyo means guts, determination, grit. And these are the admiration I have for these guys, is you've got to have that to keep going. This whole idea of gambate. And gambate also means not just keep going, but good luck. So it's who dares wins. It's like keep going and you'll get good luck. Luck favors the brave, that sort of idea. So, and that's one of the inherent philosophies of the ninja is keep going. In this case here, it's like you keep getting hammered, fix yourself up until that stops, because you're the cause of that. You want to know who the problem is. Michael Jackson said, let's look at the man in the eye.
No one more profound than Mike. Bless him, rest his soul. So,
what amazing.
As we look to come to wrap up just a little bit, I want to ask just your thoughts on this and your take on this is we've talked a lot about the traditional martial arts. You've talked about Wing Chun, you've talked about we're talking about karate, we're talking about kempo, we're talking about ninjutsu. We've discovered that taekwondo. These are traditional martial arts. A lot of people are familiar with, but of course, things change, things morph, people try things and bring things together. And I think the Israelis have, in the armed forces, Krav Maga, which seems to have taken off in a life of its own on YouTube and what have you. There's even, I believe there's a school close to me somewhere here, not that far. It looks rather fascinating, but I'm wondering from your perspective, your thoughts about, say, not so much about Krav Maga itself, though. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts about it. But these new, different packages of fighting, perhaps. I'm mindful of my words.
Oh, I've got an interesting story, and then I'll right. So right. I'm teaching in Martin, right, in my little dojo in Martin. The guy comes in from Wanganui. And anyway, I said, so you've got martial arts experience? He says, yeah. I've been doing ninjutsu for the last 6 years. I says, where? And he says, Wanganui. I says, what's the school called? He said, it's called Kakuzuru Ninjutsu. And then he says, and I says, what did that entail? Because I never heard of it. Kuza means grass. Ku means sky, but don't know where that came from. So I said, that sounds interesting. What did you do? And he said, we just throw shuriken and do this sort of stuff. And then he said, we'd go out on these camps. And on these ninja camps, the head instructor from Palmerston North would come over and, and I said, from Palmerston North. And he says, yeah. And I said, Was his name such and such? I won't mention his name. He says, yeah. He says, do you know him? And I said, yeah. I said, actually, I taught him ninjutsu. And I said, so I suppose that makes me unofficially the Grand Master of Kakuzu-Ryu Ninjutsu, so you should fit in quite nicely here. My point is that this system, you heard of Zendukai, and I'm not mocking Zendukai because there's some good martial artists in there. I had run a seminar in Palmerston North back in 1985 or 1986, and a few people had come along to it, about 14 people or something. Anyway, 2 guys from Zendukai came along, and we were doing various things. And anyway, after the seminar, they really appreciated it. And I was corresponding with one of these guys. He had sort of taken all the stuff that I'd shown him in this. I was only a 6Q in the seminar, so I didn't know anything really. He had taken what I had showed in that seminar and my philosophies that I'd written in the letters we were writing backwards and forwards, and he'd established a whole wing of ninjutsu under the banner of Zendukai called Kakuzu-Ryu Ninjutsu. So it's obviously very that art and that whole system is quite eclectic anyway, because that's what they do, is they take things from various things. I don't have any issues or anything with things like MMA, but their emphasis is on fighting, and mine's not. Fighting's not even on the horizon for me. I'm working towards Ninpo and creating those fields that then make my life better as I go along, create form. So martial arts has Taekwondo. Taekwondo was only established in 1952 by General Choi Hong Hai. And before that, it was Taekyon, and it's got a component of Shotokan karate in it. So it's an eclectic system. So I don't have a problem with it unless you get people sometimes who will bag Bujinkan and go, these guys say that they can fight and they can do this and do that. They're full of it. They're useless. I've watched their stuff on YouTube and they're crap, you know. And so what I would say is I would rather have those traditions. Hatsumi Sensei is the 34th Grandmaster of Togakure-ryu Ninjutsu. That lineage is an unbroken lineage right the way back to Daisuke Nishina in 1100. All of those schools that we practice, Gyoku-ryu, Koto-ryu, Takagi-yoshin-ryu, Shinden-fudo-ryu, Kumokure-ryu, they all have unbroken chains of lineage all the way back to the early parts of Japan's history. So there is, when I show you a certificate that's from the Bujinkan, it's authenticated by not only Hatsumi Sensei, but all of those previous lineages. Okay. That I suppose if I do have an issue with things like that, they'll take the good parts out of a martial art and leave the hard parts or the kicking out of Taekwondo, but we won't take the rest of it. And therefore they take a bit of this and a bit of that. And it makes it effective in the ring. And I've judged open tournaments with various different martial arts, from Namwai Pai to Kung Fu to Taekwondo karate. At the end of the day, when you watch them in the ring sparring, it all looks the same. You know, it's just like kickboxing. You know, there is no difference. I mean, BJJ is a little bit different because obviously they do a lot more grappling and ground fighting. But again, they are operating to a set of fighting rules, just as cage fighting. And people say, oh, it's all open and that. But at the end of the day, there are still rules. Always remember a story. One BJJ guy went over to Japan, was in Japan, and he went to the Hombu dojo and he said, I want to try my skills on someone. And Nagato was teaching the class. Nagato goes, oh, okay, I'll attack me. So Nagato goes out the front. The guy comes in to sort of grab him around the waist, and Nagato just knees him straight in the head and punches him on the way down, and the guy ends up unconscious on the mat.
Oops.
Because, and yeah, so it's a different focus. By saying that, I don't want people coming to my dojo and challenging me, and it's like, okay, well, we'll see what happens. I'll play the game, but I'm not going to spar with you. If I hit you, if I can't complete a situation in 3 or 4 moves, I'll get the hell out of there. The ninja that runs away comes back to, I say, fight another day. That was an old saying. Yeah, but
Fascinating. Yeah, it is. It's fascinating because part of it is me thinking, well, there's the evolution, people learning things and they pull things together, and it's being like the word. I was struggling for the word, which is eclectic. Pulling these things together. Now, I don't know the philosophies around Krav Maga or anything like that, but I do remember reading books. And again, this is only from reading from a third perspective, second-hand perspective, I should say. Jeet Kune Do with Bruce Lee, and how he would pull different elements, but there's a underlying philosophy around why he would do things. Like when you're talking about timing, I'm thinking about this drawing where he has attack by drawing. You draw people in, or you draw something so you throw off their timing and what have you. It also reminded me of a good mate of mine who's into BJJ and other something else I forget in Adelaide, but he told me that a story where he learned how to slip a punch by working at McDonald's on late nights. I was like, all right. So how did that work? But it was interesting how you can pull all these things together. It forms our thinking around or refining the square, our foundation.
Yes. Yes.
Totally fascinating, because I do remember this one guy, and he must have been a black belt. No, he had a white gi. This is Kempo. So the black belts had black gis, everyone else had white gis, and he must have been a brown belt then. But he would punch with this really crooked arm. So you go there, right? And the technique is to practice, I think I forgot the word for it, but it's an outside-in block, right? Yeah, so you go like that.
In a forearm.
But you can never do it because his arm was so crooked that you could always go over the top of it, or you miss it or something like that. And I was thinking, well, why couldn't I? And you reflect on it, right? And then you think of ways how to counter that or how to tweak it so that now you're starting to challenge the rule, the ha, and really build upon, this is that technique, but what if this happens? And so that was going through my mind. To be honest, I was a useless martial artist, but I like watching the movies, man. I like watching the movies, but it was
probably not.
There's a lot to unpack with. I'm pretty sure we could keep going for the rest of the day on this, because you've shared so many insightful things that I am picking that our listeners, that you're listening to this, what the challenge would be is to now adapt or apply some of this thinking that Stuart has shared to your context, whether it's work, whether it's family, whether it's sport, whether it's a hobby, whether it's martial arts, whatever it is, because everything, going back to principles and your underlying why, your philosophy, can apply to anything. That's why I'm really connecting with this, because it makes a lot of sense. And if you, like you were saying, you see the Special Forces guys, or the FS guys, and SF guys that we've been talking to over the last wee while, they are exhibiting some, or probably all of what we're sharing here. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think I had a discussion with one of my old students about doing this series and or doing this talk, and he did say, which reminded me, which I think it's really cool that someone who you've taught comes back and bounces back stuff.
Yes.
And that happens quite a bit when you're teaching. It's like, oh shit, you said that. Oh, okay. And one of the things that he said that really was important and within this art is there's two things that we try and develop within the Bujinkan. Some people do, some people just miss the whole point, but that's beside the point. It's an individual thing. First one is what we call Jihu no Kokoro, the benevolent heart, the all-encompassing heart. So it's that compassionate heart, which is very synonymous with a lot of spiritual development of moving everything from the head to the heart, and in a Vedic sense, sorting out the three lower shit chakras, for want of a better term, to come to the heart. That's really important because the heart is where it's all at. So that's developing that Jihi no Kokoro, which is probably where it differentiates between maybe the SF guys who are serving their country, to make a difference. It will come back to the heart. It always does. The second part is developing these Shin Gan, which is the eyes and the mind of God. So what you're trying to see is that single perspective, or that single point of everything. It's like developing that third eye, if you like. So at the moment we look out of this eye, we're one-eyed, where we might look at something from this perspective and ignore this perspective, or vice versa. So what we're trying to do is see things from that balance, from that singularity, if you like, which again is another aspect of developing spiritually. So that Shingan of developing the eyes and the mind of God. And that really can only be done. I mean, we go back to the sword, that blade on that is the singularity, if you like. That's why I have so much respect again for these SF guys, because they're on the cutting edge. They're on the razor's edge. That's what that means. So I suppose that really drives my focus. The biggest buzz I get out of training, as mentioned through quite a few of these guys, is nagare, is flow.
Okay.
Is that flow, flowing from one technique to another. The rhythm of life is a powerful thing. Feel it in your heart, feel it, that song that from way back in the 60s. It's so true. Everything is moving all the time. Get in the flow of nature, get in the flow of the elements, get in the flow of the seasons. And if you start harmonizing with that flow, with the elements, it's amazing what happens. It's magical. It really is. This manifestation, every day you think of something and it turns up on your doorstep. You walk into a room and someone gives you exactly what you were just thinking about. That sort of thing is where the magic's at, in regards to my focus on that spiritual development, is that ascension, is coming back to that singularity, trying to see things from a balanced perspective. What's going on at the moment is classic, here and here. And I'm not going to talk about that because people are sick of hearing it. But trying to see it from a balanced perspective,
that's actually fascinating.
Sides.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Again, I'm not going to go down that. That's a different can of worms. But I do feel myself as I watch or hear certain bits. I feel the energy, and it's a negative energy. Go, what? And I feel that, but I'm mindful of that. So what I'm doing, I see this a lot now in my LinkedIn feed. That it'll pop up and things will happen, and I'm going, well, do I respond? And generally now I'm going either block or remove from the feed, and so I evade, because I don't want to feel that negative energy, because I know what it's doing. Yeah, it feeds it.
And feed it. Yes, and feed it. I tripped myself off Facebook probably 5 months ago, because I couldn't help myself. I'd probably be in jail for sedition. Would I post on there about some of those feelings? I mean, emotion's a very important part of our psyche. Emotion is energy in motion. It's motivating energy. So that's what makes the world go round. People get happy, people get sad, people get angry, but they're all just different ends of the spectrum. At the end of the day, water is hot or it's cold. It's not hot water, it's not cold water. It's just a degree of that, if you like. So I think I totally know where you're coming from. I quite like this idea of sitting in my Zen garden, talking to someone like you, and just being in the moment. It's a bit like what you're trying to do is just find peace. And this idea of fighting for peace, someone said fighting for peace is like having sex for birth control.
You never get there.
You never get there. It was a little bit more crude than that, but but the idea of just trying to live in peace and harmony. People look at you and go, yeah, but you're a ninja. But that's what the ninja did, as they went to the mountains, and that's what I'm doing. My dojo was called Yamabiko. Yamabiko means echo of the mountains. I lived in Wairuru. I went away, came back. I'm just around the other side of the mountain now.
Oh, I love that. Morning. Oh, I love how you connected that. That is awesome. And I think this is actually probably a good place for us to start to wrap up, because this is the echo of the mountain, Yamanga. That is just really buzzing off in my head, because now it just tells me how we connect back to all things, the elements, the earth, Papatūānuku, the rangi, the sky, and all these things. And so just before you, Yamabiko.
I don't care whether I sell books. I'm not here to sell books, but if people want more of an insight, that's my reflection coming back from the mountain. is the
Yamabiko.
Yamabiko. Probably a lot of what we talked
Nice.
about is in there, actually. That's just one of my books.
Brilliant.
I've got a few of them.
We'll figure out how to get. We'll figure out how to get this so that people can connect with you on that. But to wrap all this up, I guess what I really want to do is, first of all, appreciate your time, Stu, and sharing your insights. I don't know about you, but this last 2.5 hours has gone super quick. Timing has gone out the window, but it's been valuable. It's been immensely valuable. It's been powerful. I actually think it's been healing to some extent. It's been enlightening for sure. So I want to just leave this with you, Stu. If you were able to bring all your experiences, all the things that you've learned, all the things that have really resonated with you, and if you were able to leave 3 things with people that would help them to either create a better them or create a better future, what do you think those 3 things could be?
Well, I think I write to help people. That would be my books. This, if you wanted to understand what ninjas were all about, and again, I'm not trying to plug this. I didn't come on here to make money out of selling books. That's not what my goal is. I don't care about money. I can manifest stuff, so money's not important. So I think my books are a legacy for me. I've sent you some photos of my garden. I think people can come here and connect with the philosophy and the understanding. There's golden toes out there, the yin yang, the philosophies around that. I think that's another legacy that could help people to understand and connect. Just being, there's so much going on out there. Just stop and smell the flowers. Take some time, give some time to yourself. It's really important. I don't know where I'd be without taking that time for myself in this space, creating the space for me. And I think third would be keep going. Just keep going. Gambate kudasai. If you keep moving, a rolling stone gathers no moss. I know it's hard. I know sometimes it's hard to understand the situations, and hard to get not caught up in all the conspiracy theories and everything like that. But I suppose just understanding, and if I can leave you with the most profound thing that was ever given to me, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We're not human beings trying to find spirituality. We're human beings spiritual beings having a human experience. We're here for a reason. Things are all connected. Everything happens for a reason. We don't always see the reason until later on down the track. Sometimes we hate the situations we're in, but it's all about ascending. It's all about going back to the source, about trying to be that better person.
Beautiful. I like that. Thank you, Stu, for your time. Thank you for sharing your philosophies and your thoughts and really educating us on ninjutsu and what a ninja is. I feel like I have evolved from my thinking of throwing stars and exploding bombs and doves flying out the window, and there you go, shuriken, all right, to now having a little bit better appreciation of what a ninja is all about. To echo something you said a lot earlier in our conversation, I feel that in this conversation that we've had, that I can see your tipuna behind you, your ancestors, not only in your family, but also those that have shared out their lineage to help you arrive at your position right now. So for me, that's a sign of a master. So respectfully, I pay my respect to that. And to New Zealand, Aotearoa, you have heard the voice and the words of a real-life New Zealand ninja. Right? Now, whatever your preconceptions may have been, I'm pretty sure at the end of the conversation, this podcast, they would have changed. We encourage you to be able to take on board some of these things, to explore it, and as Stuart has said, to keep moving, to explore, to try, and without doubt, this has been a wonderful 2.5 hours that we've shared together to be able to create somewhat of a better future. So without further ado, let's go.
Tomo arigato.
If you enjoyed this conversation, we invite you to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media. Be sure to hit that notification bell so that you can be kept up to date with more inspiring messages from amazing New Zealanders each and every week. If you found this discussion helpful, we invite you to share this link with your networks and tag Brian and I when you do. We would love to hear from you, so please be sure to leave us a review so that we can continually strive to provide the best service possible. As Abraham Lincoln said, the best way to predict your future is to create it. We thank you for your support, Aotearoa, and we're excited to partner with you and working together to create a better future. Let's go.